Hello and welcome to MMA Crips Fighting Talk. On today's show, we'll be going 5 rounds of action from last night's UFC 173 Barao vs Dillashaw event. Joining me on today's show to discuss last night's action will be Chris Bad Boy Tickle. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, what's up, brother?
Glad to have you back on here, Tickle.
Good choice.
Okay, let's start with round 1, Chris, and the main event for UFC 173. Renan versus J Dillashaw. Now, going into this fight, not many fans gave J Dillashaw a shot at beating Renan. And boy, Chris, did he prove everyone wrong last night, as he managed to get the TKO victory in round 5 to become the new UFC bantamweight champion. First off, Chris, are you shocked at the result?
I am. I've never seen Dillashaw look that good ever in his career, but it doesn't doubt me, like they have Dwayne Ludwig there and he's a very smart fighter, he's a great stand-up fighter and if you look at the fight, Barao didn't even try for a takedown and got beaten at his own game. I saw reports of Barao saying that TJ talked too much smack about standing up with him, and he's a better stand-up fighter, and Dillashaw outclassed him and made him look stupid.
Yeah, did you notice Dwayne Ludwig actually entered the cage at the end of the fight? He was actually crying. That was really emotional to see there, Chris.
Oh, yeah, I bet it is. I mean, Dwayne, if you always watch Dwayne's whole career, man, that dude was so smart, and he was smarter than his trainers back then, and I believe, wasn't he the founder of AK at the beginning with Dwayne? Dude, Dwayne's a beast, man. That dude is no joke, and I know the difference between Faber and him. When he started his own gym, he wants to start his own gym again, but he's always wanted to be the head trainer there, and I know he put his heart and soul up to his family to be there with them guys. And I mean, Dwayne's probably, I would say, hands down the best striker coach, and not just only a striker coach. He was a livid fighter, and I always loved his stand up.
Well, he was clearly the mastermind behind the victory last night. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I mean, dude, I'll tell you what, his footwork, TJ's footwork was like, no doubt, looked like Dominic Cruz. Last night, I was very impressed with the angles. He made angles both ways. He was making Barao go into his punches. He switched southpaw and made him go back into his kicks. It was a very smart game plan, and Dillashaw executed it 100%. And if you have a great camp, a great trainer, and you listen to him, you're going to win. And last night was a perfect example of what happened.
It was just the way he beat him, though. It was like, if J Dillashaw was going to win, you would have thought, he's going to take him down and hold him there and ground and pound him out. But he actually outstruck him. That's the big shocker for me. It's not that he got the victory, it's just the way he got the victory. And to finish Barao too, shit. I was like a fish when the fish got the mouth open. I was like that last night when the referee stopped the fight. I was like, there was nothing I could say. I was like in shock.
Yes, no, I agree. I knew in the third round that TJ was going to finish him just because Barao was beaten. But also too, I give it up for Barao. That it's got to be hard to travel overseas. And I'm not sure there are hours differences, but it's going to be 8 hours, maybe more. I mean, it's hard to fight in Vegas. And I think a lot of fights, people from Brazil, they fight overseas. Like Aldo, a lot of his title fights overseas or over here. But I mean, I really think he underestimated Dillashaw. And when Dillashaw was going to switch to southpaw, which he never did in his whole career, I think it threw his whole game plan off, and he was getting tagged.
You see, you mentioned that too, but I think what really did it for me last night, it was TJ's attitude going into the fight. It was like, because he'd been underestimated by the fans and by Renan, it was like, fuck you, I'm the man round here, I am the champion. And he actually fought like, I am the champion. That's the way he was in round 1. He's just come out so aggressive. He was dictating the pace of the fight, and Renan was sort of like stunned. He was like, you could see in his eyes like, shit, I've not took this guy serious. And that was the main thing for me. Now, talk about round 1. He actually nearly finished Renan Barao in round 1, but what it was is, I mentioned that he was fighting like I'm the fucking man, but literally, when he nearly finished Renan Barao in round 1, he was set to sink in the rear naked choke, and he actually froze putting in the rear naked choke. It was like too good to be true. It was like, oh, I'm fighting like I'm the man, I'm the champion, but he was actually like, shit, it's really going to happen. I'm actually going to be the champion right here and now. And he sort of froze. It was like he was thinking about it. And literally, when he did sink in the rear naked choke, he didn't even put the hooks in. It was like a basic mistake. Would you agree that he froze at that moment there, Chris?
Oh, he did, man. But, I'm proud of TJ. I know TJ from I was Ultimate Fighter. And, he did a great job.
Now, throughout the fight, he was throwing the left jab and left head kick straight after. Well, he was basically faking the left jab and then threw up the head kick. He was sort of crouching down and threw it up. Do you think Barao's at fault for that? Because that was the kick that set up the finish in the fight. And he landed it a good few times throughout the fight, TJ did. Do you think that's sort of Barao's fault for getting hit with that kick so many times?
Right. No, I mean, if you look at the first round after he got dropped, I think he was hurt a lot.
Well,
he's a champion. He's never been. I've never seen his fights overseas or anything. But after he got dropped, that's a game changer. Dillashaw is changing angles, southpaw, hitting him with hard shots. I just think he broke Barao, and that was a game changer.
Well, speaking of kicks, Renan Barao, he likes to throw that spinning back kick. It's usually effective for him, but last night, TJ kept timing it perfect. Yes. Every time he threw it, TJ will jump on his back, he'll start tagging him. That was really impressive. Obviously, they rehearsed that in the gym leading up to the fight, him and Dwayne Ludwig. Do you think that was another mistake by Barao? Possibly he should have stopped using that spinning back kick because he continued to use it even though it wasn't working, and he was getting counted off it.
I agree. No, I agree. He threw that. I think the second or third round he slipped. In the fourth round he did it again. It wasn't even effective. I think at that point that he was just getting antsy, to get a shot off on him, and that right there to me shows lack of competitive, especially the high level. I've never fought in Brazil. I don't know who's over there, but I know there's a lot of fighters over in Brazil with big win streaks. Like I was gonna fight a guy a couple months ago in Brazil who was on a 15-fight win streak, and I was like, how's that even happen? You don't ever rarely see that over here. Overseas it happens. But they can be fighting tomato cans all day. How do we not know? And I never saw any Barao's fights, overseas, but they're definitely not as high class as UFC. As big as you can get, and he took in deep water. I don't think it's ever really happened to him in a career, and he just went back to his normal routine, and it cost him the fight.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's who you beat. Now look at Tito Ortiz. He's got a crap record recently. The past 7 years. But look at who he's faced. He fought the best. He could have had a totally different record if he went round King of the Cage and beat up 20 bums. Do you know what I mean? Hey, let's pull you out of the crowd.
Right.
Take him down, smash him with elbows. Right. He's got a fucking 20-0 record. So it's who you fight. It really is. But last night, to sum this up, Chris, do you think it showed that hard work pays off?
Oh, it always does, man. Hard work does pay off, and it showed. And last night, his cardio looked better. He's throwing harder punches. His angles looked better, and I think he made a champion look horrible. And after this loss, I'm pretty sure Barao will come back even better.
Okay, let's move on to round 2. Daniel Cormier versus Dan Henderson. Now, heading into this bout, Daniel Cormier was coming off his first light heavyweight victory over Patrick Cummins, while Dan Henderson was coming off a come-from-behind TKO victory over Mauricio Shogun Rua. This was a number 1 contenders bout, with the winner facing off against the winner of Gustafsson versus Jones 2. Now, the fight itself, this was a one-sided affair. Daniel Cormier managed to pretty much throw and ragdoll Dan Henderson around the cage. First and foremost, Chris, have you ever seen anyone manhandle Dan Henderson like that? Because I cannot recall anybody treating Dan Henderson like Daniel Cormier did last night. No, not really. Only fight I can even compare that to me, would be Rampage, and that was only a couple rounds. That was it. I would say no. He actually started using pro wrestling moves. He picked fucking Dan Henderson up in the air. It was like a power slam. I was like, shit, he's using pro wrestling moves here.
Yeah, that was nasty. I was super impressed, but I'm not. Daniel's only 28 years old. I thought he was older. He's only 28, and that dude's got Cain Velasquez. He's training with the best heavyweight champion in the world, pound for pound. That dude is a monster. And Cormier, He's not even an MMA fighter. He's only training for, 2 years, 3 years? Dude's a freaking beast. Like I said, that's why I picked him as my captain. I knew you'd finish Dan. I personally think Dan needs to retire. I think he's in here for the money. And, he's making lots of money, too. I think his contract is bigger than probably 94% of the people in the UFC, 95%. His pay rate is so high. He's like Chuck Liddell. Chuck Liddell, when he retired, he kept on fighting, get knocked out. And Dana's good friends with him, and Dana begged him to retire, and he did. He's making more money than he did now than he was fighting, probably. And I'm a big Dan Henderson fan. I've always been since Pride, and, it's time to retire, stop making money if we get punched drunk.
Do you not think it was more down to the size, though? Because Daniel Cormier, he was coming down from heavyweight. Let's be honest, Dan Henderson, he's pretty much a middleweight, really. He's fought at middleweight for most of his career. Even in Pride, he was about 190, 195 pounds. I don't think he really went over the 200-pound limit. So fighting a big fucking monster like Daniel Cormier, and let's be honest, it was sort of like a similar matchup because even Daniel Cormier was throwing the Hendo bombs last night. It was pretty much like a mirror image, but on the other side, Daniel Cormier was like this big fucking grizzly bear, Yep.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's a big thing. People don't understand. Like, oh, wow. And a lot of Japanese fighters, what they walk at their weight, they fight at, And Dan back then, Dan's a 185er, and there's no doubt about it. Dan's a huge 185er. I met Dan in person. He is a big guy. But 205 is too big for him. Especially at that kind of division. You got Cormier coming down from heavyweight to fight at 205. And, but a guy like Dan, he don't care. If he hits you, you're going to sleep, And that's a gift that a lot of people don't have. They have one-hitter quitters. But Dan, I think he's getting too old, and he don't want to cut the weight. He's just walking around with, you weighed in, 199 pounds? That's crazy. I bet Daniel was coming in that fight about 230, 225, 230 at least.
Now, we're talking about Daniel Cormier coming down from heavyweight, but I was watching him in the transitions on the ground last night, Chris. This guy is so quick in the transitions, in the wrestling transitions on the ground. This guy can, one minute he be in side control, then he can have your back. He's so fucking quick for a big guy. Does that shock you, Chris?
He is. No, it doesn't. That just shows the athleticism of Daniel Cormier. Just like Cain Velasquez. If you look at Cain can fight at freaking 205 too. He's fat. He's a fat heavyweight. He's not even that big. He can make it too. But he's so fast, and his athleticism is faster than heavyweights. Look at the range. There's only one weight bracket, which I still don't even understand is fair in the UFC. It's heavyweight. If you weigh 206 to 260, dude, if you weigh 225, you're giving up. Even if they make 268, look at Brock Lesnar. I guarantee he's walking around 290, 300 pounds. That's giving up 40, 50 pounds. But they know they're going to be faster, and, and it's a smart move by AKA and Daniel Cormier because he doesn't want to fight his friend. Get down and get the belt, and, AKA have 2 belts now coming up.
Well, that's my next question. Do you think he's in line for a title shot? Do you think he deserves the title shot against the winner of Gustafsson and Jones?
I do 100%. I mean, I'm friends with Gustafsson. I train with, Dominic and then the whole Alliance camp. And I thought Gustafsson was going to get an immediate title shot right away. And, I was stunned that he didn't. If they want to prove anything, the only fight for Daniel in that weight division is Gustafsson. And I seriously think Gustafsson will lose right away. If Daniel's going to take him down and beat him up, he's not going to stand up with him because Houston's too long and tall. Same thing as Jones' fight, too. But, yeah, I think Daniel is the number 2 contender at that weight right now, and Gustafsson number 1.
Now, who wins, Daniel Cormier or Gustafsson?
I personally put my money on Daniel. Daniel's hungry. I like Gustafsson, but, I saw in his last fight, he did most of his training in Sweden. He didn't come back to Alliance with Phil Davis and everybody else, which he has stellar training partners there. And he still looked great in his last fight. I don't know what's going on in their camp. I can't speak for Alliance or Gustafsson. Yeah. But, I think it's a smarter choice to be in the United States here with Eric Del Fierro. He's a great striking coach, and I got to know him, and he's just like Dillashaw's trainer. He's just as good as him, and that's a big thing to have.
Who wins, Daniel Cormier or John Jones?
Cormier. I'll take Cormier all day.
So you're taking Cormier as our next light heavyweight champion in the UFC?
I do, 100%.
See, that's the question what needs to be answered. From the fans, we're all thinking, right, John Jones, there was nobody who could defeat this guy. Then all of a sudden, Gustafsson, we'll stick him in there, he's got no chance. Then he does. He takes him to a 5-round decision, and many thought Gustafsson won. So, all of a sudden, there's a guy in the division, somebody can actually beat John Jones. Because obviously he beat Shogun, he beat Rashad, he beat Rampage, he beat all the top contenders. There was literally nobody left.
Right.
He even threw Chael Sonnen in. And now we have Gustafsson, and now we have Daniel Cormier coming down from heavyweight. So it's like, shit, there's two guys who can really beat him. So we've got the question there again. You know, is John Jones really the best? Because 2 years ago, John Jones was the best. You know, the only fight for him was Anderson Silva. But now we've got two guys in that division who could potentially beat him. So this really is the question on most fans' lips. Who is the real best light heavyweight in the UFC?
I agree. I mean, that division is really thin now. I mean, John Jones smashed everybody, you know, and he had some fights that are questionable. He shouldn't even fought. But, I mean, the toughest matchup was Gustafsson, and I actually put money on Gustafsson to beat John Jones, you know. And if you watch that 5th round, Gustafsson was winning the fight, so you got caught that spinning back up and got taken down. If it didn't happen in that fight, he would have won. He was up on the scorecards, you know, and it just, I think Gustafsson got tired moving, you know, but he's not as fast as Cormier. Cormier is very fast and very strong.
Well, let's move on to round 3, which was Robbie Lawler versus Jake Ellenberger. Now, heading into this fight, Robbie Lawler was coming off a close decision loss to champion Johnny Hendricks, while Jake Ellenberger was coming off a decision loss to Rory McDonald. Now, on paper, a close fight this, Chris, pretty much. Would you agree?
Yeah, not really. I thought Lawler beat the living crap out of his ass.
Well, you did pick Lawler. You did pick Lawler.
Of course I did. I mean, and the reason why I picked Robbie in that fight, he looked, number one, Campman knocked out Ellenberger, okay? And Ellenberger had him dropped. He couldn't finish him. It was the same fight card I fought. I was on FX, you know, fight night. And Lawler has knockout power, and he walked in a couple of punches. And what's good about Robbie is he's so smart. He makes angles, makes you walk into his power shots. And Ellenberger, it showed he didn't want to go in for that shot because he knew he was going to hit with a knee or an uppercut. And, you know, I have to say that Robbie just had a great game plan and executed it.
What did you make of round 1, Chris? Because I felt like I was watching like a fucking dance-off. It was like it was trying to impress each other's with each other's footwork. It was like, I can move better than you. Oh, look, I got better footwork than you. Nobody actually hit each other. I think there's about 4 punches thrown in the whole round 1. It's like, shit, I could have gone off and made a cup of tea. Do you know what I mean? Round 1 was absolutely horrendous for me. Would you agree, Chris?
You know what? I as me as a fighter, no. I thought it was awesome. I was explaining to people I was watching the fight with, I was explaining how he was making angles, and that's what he was doing. You know, to a lot of people, maybe they thought it was boring, but to me, I thought it was great. He was making great angles. That dude was just moving left and to the right, and when every time he would do this right, he would throw a left head kick, get you to stop, and then he would throw a left cross, you know, or throw a kick or a knee, you know, and that's a hard thing to teach. You know, he was dominating the fight, you know, but you understand, though. What's Ellenberger ranked? Number 5 in the world, number 4?
Jake Ellenberger is ranked number 5. You are correct, Chris.
Number 5. So I mean, I'm telling you right now, I mean, you can't just go in fighting a guy and make it look good. Ellenberger is a phenomenal wrestler, and you know, he's got power too. So I give my hands off for Robbie Lawler, and I think he's a title shot right away after that fight.
Now, no disrespect to Pat Miletich or the Hit Squad, but for me, Chris, Robbie Lawler has become a well-rounded fighter since training at American Top Team. Would you agree? Yes.
Well, I have a little insight. My old coach, Mark Fiore, was his old coach and trainer, and you know, he left Miletich, and Robbie was fighting in Strike Force. He was training in his house on his own. You know, a lot of people didn't know that. And when he fought, who was it? The kickboxer.
Melvin Manoff.
He was training in his garage, and Manoff was destroying him. And you know, he won. You know, Robbie's a winner, and he comes back to win. You know, and other than that, no, Robbie's a great fighter.
Now, there's a guy on my site, he's called Brian Hunt. Now, he talks about Vitor Belfort, like, he remembers Vitor Belfort versus Matt Lindland, and he said that was the fight where he felt Vitor Belfort become more patient. He wasn't trying to finish the fight in the first 10 seconds, you know. And I sort of feel the same way about Robbie Lawler. Like, he was always just over-aggressive, wanting to finish the fight there and then, but recently he's just so much more patient, you know. He waits his time.
Yeah.
When he's got somebody hurt, then he goes in for the kill, but still, he doesn't fully unload on this person. Have you noticed that too,
That's how
Chris?
it is. That's how it is, man. That's how I'm changing my game. If you ever watch me fight, I'm a very aggressive fighter, and it puts you in trouble, you know, and that's smart. He's a veteran fighter, and he's a great camp, and that's called great coaching, you know, and that's something a lot of fighters need to learn, and that's what he's evolving to now.
Okay, let's move on to the fun part of the show, which is Fighter of the Night. Chris, who was your Fighter of the Night for UFC 173?
I want to talk about my boy Vince Pichel.
Yeah?
Vince Pichel had a tough fight, and Shaquani's a very good stand-up fighter, and my boy outclassed him, took him down, and, you know, outworked him. You know, that was a tough fight, and he looked great. Yeah,
I picked him for my team. I said he's been improving. He had a tough time out against the Russian last time. He got suplexed and knocked out, but, impressive victory, I agree with you. But that is not my selection. I'm going to have to go with J Dillashaw. I was going to pick Daniel Cormier at first because I've never seen anyone do what he did to Dan Henderson. Obviously, he was coming down from heavyweight, so it does take a little bit of the sizzle out of his performance in a way. But for me, J Dillashaw, hands down. I don't really need to explain why, really. I think we discussed in round one pretty much why he deserves performance of the night. So, J Dillashaw for me. Okay, let's move on to round 5 and our fight of the night. What was your fight of the night, Chris?
I'm going to say Cormier finishing Henderson, man. I don't know. It was a crazy fight card. You know, just a lot of upsets and a lot of big victories and finishes that people didn't think was going to happen.
I'm going to have to go with Tony Ferguson versus Katsunori Kikuno. Now, this was...
oh, my goodness.
Go on, Chris.
That guy was horrible. I don't know why he even got to the UFC. And I wonder if he was a late film. That dude's stand-up is garbage. I would have knocked that dude out in the first round.
You know, I thought the same during the fight. I thought it reminded me of an old Pride fight. Do you know where one guy was, like, just really good at one traditional martial art and then he was fighting like a well-rounded fighter? It was like watching one of those fights. But when I listened to an interview, I listened to a post-fight interview, and Tony Ferguson was bigging Katsunori Kikuno up like he was this very good fighter from Japan. Like, it was an honest fighting. I was like, really? I didn't feel that way. I was hoping that you might know this Kikuno guy.
Never heard of him, and I wouldn't even put him in the UFC if I was one of the people on the chair. That dude was garbage, and it was I mean, he's tough. He took some punches, but he was running away with his hands down as an embarrassment to me.
But like you said, the guy can fucking take a shot, and that's what actually made the fight so exciting. It was just literally, I would say, Chris, about 90% of the punches thrown was landed to the face. Literally.
Right. Yeah.
That guy,
I mean, that dude, he was blocking punches with his face for sure. That's all he was doing.
Okay, we reached the end of the show there, Chris. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, man. It was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the UFC 174 picks, and hopefully this time we don't tire. I'll be the champion.
Speak to you soon, Chris. Bye.
Have a good weekend.